is under siege. The nation is under siege.
Good evening, everybody. This is Divided We Stand. It's right around 9 o'clock on Saturday evening. It's the 27th of April, and it's our 183rd show. So a pat on the back to Dave and I, Dave and me, and so it's good to see everybody. Hopefully everybody will be here. You can find us on Facebook. You can find the show right there on Facebook with the Divided We Stand group page, and you can also find us on YouTube on the Divided We Stand channel. We don't monetize anything, so don't worry, we're not asking for anything, just your involvement, and we really appreciate it. And a quick shout out to Veg, who did mention us in his video from last week, so we really appreciate that, Veg. It's very kind of you. And we see that we have a few people here already, so we hope that you'll join in our discussion tonight. That's what makes this show work. So please don't hesitate to put in your commentary, your questions, or whatever. We'll be glad to address them. Well, it's time to introduce my co-host and good friend, and that would be David Price. Dave, how the hell are you doing?
Keep it gangsta, dog. Keep it gangsta.
Oh.
Keep it gangsta, dog. Keep it gangsta. Keep it gangsta, dog. Keep it gangsta.
Keeping it gangster. I don't know how that came up.
Do you have any
I
idea?
swear I don't know how that came
Your
up.
rate of incompetency is trumped
Keep
only
it
by
gangster,
Donald Trump.
dog. Keep it gangster.
No,
I want to
it's
thank
pretty-
you, dog.
it's pretty-
I want to thank you. I had no idea
Please-
that was coming up.
No, that's you don't have any idea about much of anything really. But it's kind of fun, It's like working with the mentally challenged. I feel that when I work with you, which I guess is okay in the long run. All right, let's get started here. We got a bunch of stuff. What's got you upset this week, Mr. Weinstein?
I'll tell you exactly what's got upset. Something that I kind of always knew, but we were at the push to shove point, a rock and a hard place, whatever you want to call it. It was the week where you've kind of found out that where the Supreme Court was going to land. And it's quite obvious, just the fact that they entertain this immunity case really bugs me. But the fact that the 6 judges are just asking these ridiculous questions and the stall is on. And that's exactly what Trump wanted. I mean, if they automatically just came out and said, well, he has complete immunity. Well, they wouldn't do that, because then Biden could say, okay, get the chainsaws out. Let's take 6 of these Supreme Court heads off, since everything's okay. No, they won't do that. But what they will do is they'll stall until the president, till the orange bastard become president again by thieving the election and do whatever he wants. So it's frightening, because that is the law of the land. That is the Supreme Court. And it is a fixed court like it never has been. We've had this kind of thing before to a certain degree, but nothing like this. Alito, and I'm telling you, Dave, I'll blame John Roberts above anybody. This is his court, and his colors are coming out. So I'm going to leave it off to you before blood starts coming out of my ears.
Okay. First of all, I think it's interesting that normally in a democracy, you need numbers, correct? One more vote, one more this.
Majority
one more
wins.
that.
That's democracy.
Right. But that's not the case in the Supreme Court. All you need is 4 yays to take a case. All right. So it begins there. We've said before, we'll maintain it. It's absolutely true. It is a 6-3 court if you look at ideology. 6 conservatives, 3 liberals. Now, if you check social media or check the internet, you're seeing all kinds of reports. They will do this, they won't do that. They will do this, they won't do that. And of course, I'm not a legal expert, but I do think, as you've said, we've lost already in the sense that there will be no ruling on this immunity until after the election. Okay, that's clear. So, and Trump's, it is reported tonight that Trump's camp is elated because they got what they wanted. They got the delay. Now, what Jack Smith or others do, we'll have to see. They may wait. I think what they're going to do, Brian, and again, I don't have any inside information, but just kind of sensing how they're going to react. I think they're going to send it back to the lower court for more clarification. What was that?
And there's the stall right there.
More delay. And there's no way, absolutely. I mean, I think everybody pretty much agrees on that in the legal community, no matter where you fall, that there is no way that this will be decided now before the election, probably. So, and as you pointed out, so appropriately and aptly, the Supreme Court doesn't want to grant full immunity because that would allow the current president to do it. Now, I think,
and they know that it's absolutely absurd to have. That means somebody can do anything they wanted to.
Well, I think if you look at it, the 2 judges that I am least fond of, because they do have experience, would be Alito and Thomas. So let's look at what they did. Thomas, as usual, just sits there and does
nothing. He does nothing. He just sits there.
Yeah. He just sits there. He speaks every 10 years or something like that.
Because he's not prepared to speak. He's going to embarrass himself.
I would assume that's part of it. But it's very effective.
The only things that I've heard him say is what Anita Hill said about the Pepsi can. That's the only thing.
Well, no, he has spoken a couple times, but very rarely. So let's look at Alito first. And so where's he leaning? He raised the point that that maybe if you don't have some kind of immunity, it might be the end of democracy. What? But he was saying, what about, he raised it, what about a close election and the president wins, whoever it is, wins by a very narrow margin and is now worried that he will be tried for something at the end, and he'll just kind of, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I thought the most interesting point of all was, do you realize, and I did not until I went back and looked, there was not one mention of 2024 or November or January 6th. Not one mention of that anywhere. So that led Judge Gorsuch to say, we're writing a rule for the ages. Bullshit. Right. You had a rule for the ages. You had Roe v. Wade, and you just completely emasculated that. Let's see. Let's see what Gary has to say. Perhaps the court's action will result in jurors absolutely finding the orange and Kelly, this costing him the election. One verdict is better than none. That's true, Gary. The only thing, and I'm not, again, you can't say anything. I learned today, I didn't know it. I guess I should have known it before, but I didn't. That, and I don't know how this happened, unless they ran out of challenges. One juror said he gets his news from Truth Social. That doesn't sound real good.
No, it doesn't.
Because Truth Social is.
Because that's a choice.
Yeah, and it's Trump's. I mean, that's Trump's.
I mean, how would you land on that particular, platform without knowing what that was?
Oh no, they know. I mean,
right.
I mean, it's kind of a farce. I mean, to think that you're going to have juries, and again, people don't understand a lot about the legal system because it's very complex and complicated. It's not, like I say, well, if they have knowledge of the case, you can't serve. That is not what it is. You have to convince the judge and the prosecutor and the defense attorneys that you can fairly and equitably resolve the case. So it doesn't, and again, what do you have? I can, right? I mean, anybody who wants to be on that case would say that. Now, it would be interesting, and we'll find out when the trial's over. But why would some actually want to be on that case? I mean, and there are reasons. Okay, it's historic. It's the first trial of its type in the history of mankind, involving an American ex-president.
Right.
So I would think, but there is a danger involved. That's why they're so secretive about the names and releasing things and what have you. But let's get back to the Supreme Court. I think there is some movement, like Gary said, maybe it will influence another case. But today, AOC came out and said that Judge Thomas should be impeached. Now that's not new, but she said, "I will introduce the bill."
Well, that's fine. But how does that, in effect, do anything?
Well, if and that's a huge if you could convince enough senators on the Republican side,
Not going to happen.
and you're not going to happen. I know. What it does is it's a weapon you're using, and I have some statistics. Talk a little bit later that shows how important this war of words is that we're having. It's not meaningless. So it's all about perception, right? Donald Trump is perceived as a lot of things that he's not. Primarily, he's perceived as a good businessman. I think it's somehow up to 22 or 23 businesses that he's worked have failed.
Right, and then you start to wonder, did he purposely fail? And I think he would want to be a success, but I think after you start losing a few times and you start playing the system, that you actually use it for leverage.
Well, again, we don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I really don't know.
No, I don't either, Brian. I think the thing, that's a little bit frustrating is I don't know if he believes the hype. He certainly delivers the hype, okay? And we can look out. We can look at his behavior. Because he really didn't weigh in on the immunity argument while it was in the court. Okay. Let's see. We got Global
saying that SCOTUS needs to have their glands expressed.
Yeah. Well,
which can be a real problem when a dog has that problem. Yes.
Well, that segue is going to lead me to something that I'll jump back. I thought the most surprising and interesting news of the week came from your dark-haired fantasy girl, Governor Kristi Noem. No, Kristi Noem. Now,
oh my God! Now I know exactly what you're talking about, because now you're getting into
what she does
my realm with the animals.
She releases a book. Nothing new there. Okay, candidates have done that for at least as long as I followed politics. They probably didn't do it in the 1830s because there weren't that many people in America that could read. But so she does. She does this book. And what happens is in the book, she describes that she had this dog and it didn't become a good hunting dog. And she really hated the dog, used the word hate. And so I guess in the ultimate expression of hate, she shot the damn dog and killed it. Now, wow. Not so much that she did it. That's horrible enough in thinking about it. But the fact that she would print it and attach her name to it. Now, she either had to think or somebody had to advise her that was in benefit. And maybe they said, you got to prove you're tough and this will really prove you're tough. Well, if there's one thing that probably even all except the most, bellicose right-wingers and all but the most bellicose left-wingers agree on is, animals probably shouldn't be killed, especially.
And they shouldn't be abused.
Yeah,
And they certainly
and
should be killed because you want them to do a better job of hunting, which in itself I have a problem
right,
with.
right. So, I think it will be interesting, and I hate to use that word because it sounds it will, it's interesting when watching the end of democracy, but what does that rule her out as a vice presidential candidate? Now we don't know. We know her name was. A lot of people felt that Trump wants a woman. A lot of people felt that Trump wants an attractive woman.
Right.
She is a governor. She is a known name, a little bit. Now it was interesting. A couple of the more liberal. She was a member of Congress before she became governor, and they actually said when she first arrived, she really wanted to do well. She was really working toward it. Seemed to be, really getting into the political end. And their point was, this is how corrupting Trump has been to even people who seemed to be decent at one point. Now, you can make the argument they couldn't have been so decent if they went with Trump. Well, right now, if you want to get elected dog catcher under as a Republican, you better somehow either not attack Trump or issue some support.
Right. I thought,
for
does he
him.
want 5% of any kind of funds that they have? If they're going to use
Yeah, well, that was the other
name?
thing too. I mean, think about that. He that's been passed because he controls completely the Republican National Committee, and that may work to our advantage. I was talking to somebody politically kind of astute here in D.C., and they were kind of glad that happened because it's almost in the hundreds of workers that he dismissed. So they have no clue how to run a friggin' election. He's just putting in his friends and buddies and his daughter-in-law, and so they really don't have any ground game right now in terms of the election. So it does put them maybe at a disadvantage. But all that is yet to be seen. So let's get back to just end up that Supreme Court discussion since we got on the dogs. So we said, I think that the Supreme Court will eventually reject the absolute immunity claim. I mean, I didn't see, but what they're trying to find is another way around it, and they are legitimately or illegitimately.
Mm-hmm.
They could have said, no, we're not going to take this, right?
Right.
And they did. And once they did, they put it on the slow track because they have fast tracked some things before, and they didn't fast track this. So definitely, best case scenario, they're being overly cautious, and I don't think that's true.
Can we
I
look,
think that
Dave? Jimmy Raskin made a good point about one of the questions the justice is asking. That's from Alito, your good buddy.
Right.
Says the most astonishing thing for me today was Justice Alito's question. He actually asked whether holding the president criminally accountable for actual crimes committed, whether murder or coup or you name it, whether holding them accountable would actually encourage them to stage more violent coups to stay in office to avoid prosecution, which buys completely into Donald Trump's narcissistic criminal worldview. So if you think about the enormity of that,
Well,
he's saying like, well, if we hold him accountable, he may just go off and go crazy, or so we're going to let Charles Manson keep stabbing away because he might actually drop the bomb or something.
That brings it back to the position I maintain until I'm proven wrong, and that could certainly happen. But it's all about right now about who controls the military and what the military will do.
Right.
That's really
what Ronnie and I were
that's
discussing
really
on the way
what it
home
comes down
tonight.
to. I don't think there'll be any doubt that Donald Trump, win, lose, or draw, will encourage disruptive behavior and violence.
Well, let's go into that in a little bit because we do know that he had problems with Milley because Milley wasn't buying into his shit.
Right.
Milley felt used, especially at
after they marched the Bible, the upside down Bible incident.
But it's what bothers me is again it's Flynn and because obviously if there's one Flynn, there's got to be not just his brother but others out there that he tried to influence, and the fact that Flynn's brother is still a general still bothers me, and
Well,
he knows that he's got to get the military, because remember, the military is to swear to the Constitution, which is going to go against Trump. So that's one of the key issues for Trump, because if he wants to do the Russian thing, he's got to control the media. So he's going to have to go after the journalists, and he kind of is doing that already, or at least having, Republicans.
yes.
He said, "You scum," from CNN and all that. Okay, but he'll really go after the journalists more so than even before. He's going to control the media. He's going to control the military. I mean, he's going after all of them, but the military is the big one because they're the ones that hold the stick.
And I would, if forced to say how the military would go now, I think, from what I've observed as a very distant observer, even though I live close to the Pentagon, they don't invite me in and they don't talk to me about their decisions. But I think we may be pleasantly surprised about that. The main generals will hold to the Constitution.
Right, but Trump knows that, and that's what bothers me.
Okay,
that gives me anxiety.
Then you have to look at how is he going to get rid of that.
Right. That's where we have to speculate.
And then you have to look at, would the military put up with that, or would they consider that kind of a reverse coup and go after him?
Well, what if he is the commander in chief? He would be the commander in chief, correct?
Correct.
So he can literally fire
of the president.
Anybody he wants to, just like Truman relieving MacArthur. So if he says, okay, I want Milley gone, I want this gone, and now I'm going to put, Michael Flynn.
Right. Could
reinstate him in as a general.
But again,
and now you've lost it all.
You're talking about trained men with guns. We're not talking about some militia. We're talking about the U.S. military, which is still the most powerful military in the world.
Right.
Would they go along with that? Or would they? And we've had hundreds. Well, maybe hundreds of books and TV shows about things like that over the years. And unfortunately, right now, it's sort of like Star Wars. Your only hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think in a way the military is our only hope at this point, given what we're seeing from the court, given what we're seeing from Congress, both the House and the Senate. So we'll have to wait.
Right, but again, if it gets like the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court can decide what's right and what's wrong. But if the commander in chief is the commander in chief, all he has to do is fire people until he gets the person he likes.
But Brian, on the other side of that is, will the military, other generals, or just the general soldiers follow that if they feel that Trump is acting against the Constitution?
That's
the issue.
Well, did Milley walk with him? He did,
Well, but again, he did, but he had his eyes opened, and I think there was
Milley would be the first to go. I think you'd agree with that. Milley will be gone if Trump becomes president.
Oh, he actually said he wants him executed.
Yes.
So there's no question about that. It's a question of we don't know how popular certain generals are. We don't know the makeup. We do know that there are quite a few fascists or authoritarian-leaning people in the military, as well as in law enforcement and other areas.
And there are right-wing Republicans in the military.
Oh, no question. But how many?
A lot. A lot. I mean, basically, they're I want to get race. They're white, most of them.
Well, of course. Tonight, as we speak, a group of mostly young people, even though they're wearing masks, they appear to be relatively young, are marching in West Virginia, having a demonstration there that is definitely, right wing. And we've seen in some of those demonstrations, of course, military figures or law enforcement figures are there. I went finally. I wanted to see it delayed, and I would urge everyone to see it. The movie Civil War.
Haven't seen it yet, and I did see the trailer. So
and what it does is, Again, I'm not defending Alex Gardner. I happen to like him as a director and a writer. And this was kind of his movie. He directed, wrote it, put it together. I mean, it's not like, it's not a group thing. It's his. So it's his vision. One of the criticisms of the movie, I think, is part of its power, is the fact that they throw you right into the situation, right? They don't tell you this is what happened and this is what happened. You're just thrown right in. And
As the viewer,
as if you don't know what happened, you just know that there's two sides.
something's
You're not
happened.
really-
Right?
You don't really know. I mean, you know that the country's split,
Mhm.
and then there's little subtle things like you find out. Again, it's just a toss away. You find out that the president is serving his third term, so you know that somehow he's violated,
Right.
the norm.
Something's been violated.
You find out that there's more than one alliance is California and Texas, and everybody says, what could bring those two together? I don't know what could, but again, it's a movie. It's not real life.
Oh, if it was
But you find out
Orange
there's-
County, you could probably.
You also find out that Florida is also in a rebellious state. So I mean, it's not just, and there's all these things going on. What I thought was so effective were the battle scenes. Now again, maybe it had more impact on me because I'm 3 metro stops from DC, but watching that was just very powerful, and it was interesting. Gardner, there's 4 journalists, and they're like, it's almost like the Wizard of Oz. I mean, in the sense of the journey, which is one of the big deals. And there's a veteran female war photographer. There's a novice.
When you say,
she kind
can I ask you real quick here? 'Cause
Sure.
when you say the journey, is this one of these things where the journey is more important than the goal itself, or you just?
Well, no, it's what you learn on the journey. So what I mean, not to give away anything in the movie, it's not really a shocking surprise movie. It's Civil War. So what happens is there are 4 journalists who band together reluctantly.
Is this on
This
Netflix?
young, no, it's still in the movies. It won't be on there for a while. So it's still in the theaters. But what happens is one young journalist, she's a female, she gets attached to the group. There's one who kind of plays the lead male role. He is actually a print journalist. Then you've got the main role is Kirsten Dunst, who plays this female photographer, somewhat jaded, from doing all this. And then you've got the wise old black journalist. And I don't want to give anything away. Not all of them make it. Not all of them make it out.
Oh, well, in the
But
Civil War,
there's-
you would assume they wouldn't.
Well,
Because a lot of
right,
people
but
don't make it.
well, and a lot don't. And again, different scenes. It really came out of there, and I think I mentioned last week. And as a movie, it's so timely. It's so timely.
Well, do you think that
that-
this was created by him because he was, watching like Handmaid's Tale and seeing what's going
I
on?
think. Oh yeah, I don't think there's any question about that.
I think
now-
a lot of us could come up with a general outline of what a Civil War would be.
easily. Now, what I find interesting is he's British, so he might bring
Okay.
another twist. He
Right.
might bring another twist
He
to
looks
it.
as the outsider coming in.
Yeah, exactly. And people are asking, why did you choose this? Why did you choose that?
It's
would
obviously
s-
filmed in the United States. These are all American actors.
Correct. But there's a whole sub genre of films about the destruction of Washington D.C. Okay, when the spaceship brings it down, in Independence Day, that's kind of okay. But this is real. Now there was one thing Judy pointed out when we came out of the movies again. But remember, it's a movie. There's a question of why the president isn't better protected in the movie. And that's never answered, and why he doesn't go to the bunker or run away. And so, I mean, it's not there to answer every question. It's basically to maybe be a warning. It's basically there to say this could happen.
Especially after
Sinclair
you
Lo-
watch the movie.
What?
You know what happened to you after Easy Rider? You want to tell everybody?
Oh yeah, I said it was a movie like that when I saw Easy Rider for the first time in 1969. I was a freshman in college, and I came out and I was so upset and disturbed that I wanted to go find a redneck and kill them because they just killed our guys, right? And it's a different kind of feeling coming out of that, but it's just as disturbing. And I think I also mentioned the idea of timeliness. When the China Syndrome came out, I remember sitting in the theater, and it was about a nuclear meltdown at a plant, and there was just a toss away line that obviously the movie was made maybe a year before it was released. So they couldn't have been aware of it. They said this could blow up a state the size of Pennsylvania. And at that point, 3 Mile Island was happening. And everybody
Right.
there goes, oh my God, you know. So again, it's just a movie. But I think it's a movie. What should I say? It's a movie that helped me maybe move to a
Art
position
imitating
that
life, life imitating art, that kind
art
of thing.
but I do think I still am not really convinced that we will have a civil war like depicted in that movie.
Right. It's not a,
Both sides
well, you
have-
said it's not a north-south thing.
No,
per se.
it's the
It's a conceptual war, you know.
yeah.
It's like the Bolsheviks versus the
there's
Mensheviks or
military,
something, you know. It's like-
and of course the other thing was just using sound. I mean, probably the most realistic battle scenes many people say is this in the storming of Normandy beaches, and captured in Spielberg's movie. But this also, because the volume is very loud to begin with,
Okay.
and then it quiets down.
Or you would say the
And then
volume, this is like a war spectacle type of thing where you hear
and when it
explosions?
comes in there, you're like, man, just that alone.
Is it
kind of
as
shocks you.
graphic as, I know I'm kind of asking a lot of questions here.
No,
about the movie,
no,
it
yeah,
should-
no, it's fine.
But was it as graphic as, what was the movie with Tom Hanks from World War II?
yeah, that's what,
Sergeant
yeah.
Sergeant
Saving,
Ryan.
Saving
or
Private
whatever.
Ryan.
Private
yeah.
Ryan.
And that's
Was it
kind of,
that type of thing?
well, that was more graphic, I think, but this was more like the thought, and this was more words. Like that was more action, right? This is more words, and I don't want to give away a lot of the secrets, but there's a point, the most disturbing point, and I'll just say the question, is in a rather long scene with Jesse Plemons, who is a pretty good actor. He's just a soldier, you know, that's all. And he confronts the quartet of journalists, and he says, "Are you an American?" And he said, "Yeah, we're an American. But what kind of American are you?" And then it really goes off the rails from there.
Mm-hmm.
But what kind
Because
of
it's like they
American
ask you, are you a Trumper or are you a Biden? Or, and they shoot you because you don't know what
Veg, that's a
credentials.
really that's a really good question. I would hope it would. However, I'll take a line from the movie. The female, Miss Stones, says in the movie. Now she's been a war photographer for a long time. Like she's recognized as the best in the world, right? And she's talking to the older journalist who's with her. She said, "All those years of doing what I did it to send a message home, not to do this, not to do this, not to do this in America, and my message has been ignored." So, in that sense, she was not successful in what she was trying to accomplish, and I don't know if the movie can be. It would be interesting, and I haven't seen this. If anybody's seen it, send me an email or shoot me something, because I've been looking for it. I would be interested to know, as people come out of the film, if they would, talk about, did they go in as Trump supporters? Did they go in as Biden? Who's viewing the movie? I mean, I think that would,
Right.
That would be,
And that I would
very
be.
interesting.
I wouldn't really like to be in a theater during one of those types of movies because you don't know who's going to be in there.
Well, I mean,
what
I don't,
they're
again,
packing,
that's
so to speak.
That's part of what, of course, that's part of modern, excuse me. That's
Do you
part
feel
of-
comfortable going into a movie theater?
Oh yeah, that I never think of that, Brian. I mean, I'm not saying
I do.
I mean,
I mean-
really, but no.
What the hell was that? What happened to Dave?
Where you live, we don't even
Did
have
you accidentally cut
Republicans
out?
here. We don't.
You went out for a second. Well, that's weird. I guess I'll be right back. I wonder if he's still talking. You're right there, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know
You
what
got
happened.
cut out there. I don't know what happened.
No, it got bounced. Well, you know what? Of course, if we were conspiracy theorists, we'd be saying, "Oh,
Right. Somebody's playing games, right?
That's
Are we that
that's what
important?
happened. And it's a good example though of how we're of how it's not paranoia now to be
No,
careful.
look at what
I-
what is Ken saying here. It's the truth. It is realistic. It's a possibility.
Oh, it is.
Just like
However,
climate change is a real possibility
well,
because
that, I
it's
mean,
happening.
that's a probability. I mean, that's
Right.
a probability.
It's a
You know,
fact.
I just don't see us again. Basically, an optimist, but it's going to take some kind of scientific miracle for us to get out of that.
Right. And it will have to be geoengineered because essentially, I know we're going off topic
Right.
here. We have
No,
geoengineered the planet just doing what we're doing. It's not
and
like
we're
we
going to
had
have
a
to get it
plan to
back. Right.
geoengineer. So it
Right.
has to be solved through geoengineering or we're done. And it's going to have to reflect that light. And I think that's
And of
the way to
course,
go.
there
But
again is, you know, my question to every American who can is eligible to vote is to say, you know, if you're for the environment, you could say that Joe Biden hasn't done enough for it. Okay, but my question becomes, do you think Donald Trump is going to do more? And the answer is no. He's going to be more harmful than Joe Biden. And on almost everything, you could say that.
yeah, and the naivete of these people to think as if Biden isn't negotiating with anybody.
Yeah,
You there?
yeah, I'm here.
Well,
I'm,
something else just happened. That's a weird night here, and I'm not on the
well,
Wi-Fi. All right, we're still
anyway,
on. Let's
yeah.
just keep going.
Anyway, to kind of close out that Civil War movie, I think again, people, you know, I would encourage people to see it and you know, and not nitpick on it, but just say, can this happen? You know, the writer Sinclair Lewis wrote a book that nobody really paid attention to. It was called "It Can't Happen Here," and ever since Donald Trump, that's been kind of hanging around the bestseller list. And basically, it's a story of a demagogue who makes it to the White House, you know, not identical to Donald Trump, but that. So we've seen that already. We didn't think we could see that. And you know, is Civil War next? My best guess is it would be more guerrilla warfare than
Right.
it would be
It's just disgusting to think
armed
about.
armed insurrection. But I do see that happening. I mean,
I
I
think
do
most
see
people don't have the stomach for something like that on either side,
right,
but
but some do.
there are. You're right. There are some that do,
Certainly,
and I
certainly,
know
certainly
what you've said. You said, you know, sometimes if it ever got bad, what would we do? Maybe we would flood the weapons to the inner cities and let them be able to protect. You know, if the army's not going to do it.
You know, and you know, we don't know.
I
But
mean, that might be a last resort.
the other situation, of course, you have we have the Supreme Court, and that was probably, as you know, you led with that, and I think that is very important, very
I mean, to me,
appropriate.
it's number one by far. We don't. It's not a sexy topic, but it's
No, but
germane
it's
to what we're talking
but I do
about
think
in our lives.
I do think the other one that really comes into play, especially tying into the Civil War, is the situation on universities and college campuses across the country right now, which is pro-Palestinian or anti-Israeli protesters are pitching camps on college campuses. And we've already seen some reaction. We've seen at USC, they denied the valedictorian the right to speak at graduation. They said for her safety because she had taken out pro-Palestinian remarks. Here in
And
Washington,
there's a woman at USC had her eye poked with a
Right.
flagpole.
right? And as a former college protester of 4 years, all 4 years I was there in college, you know, you come back with a little bit different opinion now, right? My son and I were discussing it at some length today, and he's on a college campus, Alabama, and all they would do is just shoot anybody. They wouldn't care, you know. And so it's a different feeling where he is. But he said he was talking to a couple of professors who were, you know, had been active as student dissenters. And Michael said, my take on it, Dad, you think it's right? He says, my take on it is you guys were kind of had a universal feeling behind it, right?
Mhm.
And it was, you know, more an age thing, young versus old. It was, you know, and I don't want to make a hero out of us. Yes, I was opposed to war. Yes, I wanted peace. But most importantly, I didn't want to go to Vietnam and get killed. I mean, that's, there, you know, it was all one and the same. But, you know, before we put all of us up on this pedestal of, you know, altruistic and trying to end war. What happens now, though, with the new, you know, you really have to sit there, and I go back and forth. Is it right?
To block
You
a
have the
bridge
absence,
when somebody may have to go to the hospital, you know, that's
and there you, or even something else with, you know, I was thinking with Colombia, which ironically had the it's just interesting. I always I got this saying when I worked at the museum for all those years. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme, and we're in another rhyming period. Two rhymes that come out. Columbia in 1968 was one of the more brutal college protests there.
Gary's saying he had a comment that needed. Is this it, Gary? He's saying, "What do you think?" A wise guy I know all too well came up with the idea of producing a cafe designer diaper line named "From the Rectum to the P." What do you think? That's kind of a joke, right?
I'm lost, Gary. You lost me, boy.
Play
You
on
lost me,
words.
son. Too deep for me, I guess. I'll have to just say that. But as coming back to this idea of how it makes me question, in terms of, okay, I think you have an absolute right to voice your opinion there, but you also, if by voicing your opinion you silence others, that's not right. And I'm thinking, if you're at Columbia, somebody's paying $70,000 for that education, right? And so there is economic hardships involved if you're shutting down somebody else. They are now going to, they were finishing, not holding classes, they're doing it online. And Brian, that is an utter fiasco for the most part. It just doesn't work. It's just not the same thing.
It only works. I'll say this, and I'm going to separate that from this issue. When I was doing the online thing, we saw there were a few good things. Number one, the students who really, really wanted to progress, they don't want to be bothered by the student who's going to pester them for to copy the paper. Those who really, really wanted to do well in school, they benefited greatly. It was those students. So if you have a class of 25 to 30 students, there was always around 7 or 8 who did better than ever before. They got their work done, and that was it. They didn't like any nonsense. And if you really think about it, in terms of those students, people say, well, teach the ones who really care. In a sense, that works, because when we came back, those who don't really care, it's hard to teach them anyway.
Well, we know that.
I'm not trying to promote the idea of online learning, but I can't say that it was a complete washout. I mean, it actually
what
did
I
work
look
for
at,
some.
and of course, it depends on your definition. If you believe that education is okay, my favorite quote that I used in all my years of education, it's not original with me. It was from William Butler Yeats, the Irish poet, but he was also a scholar. And he said, education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. And I think that captured what I believe. And it's hard to light the fire on Zoom.
Right. Well, it also depends on the teacher. I mean, you know me, and a few people like me, we kind of like playing around with the bells and whistles, and it worked well for me generally compared to other teachers, only because I was into this kind of what we're doing right now. I can do this very thing that we're doing right now. I did with my students, and in that sense, it was like one student said to me, he says, "Look, my other classes we're behind the camera doing nothing, and then we're this and that. Right. The teacher says, here's the assignment, but you're doing this whole bells and whistles thing." I enjoyed it. But I understand you have 125 teachers. Not everybody's going to have
and your students weren't paying $70,000.
No, they weren't.
Which is, again.
Now, of course, I don't know if you're assuming that all of these people who are protesting are students. They're not.
Well, that would be interesting, because I wonder.
There were outside people coming in.
We know that, but how many? I mean, I'm just saying it's very complex. Is 4 outside?
It will grow from the outside. I guarantee you.
Well, yeah, of course. Again, if it just gets into this area.
And that was one of the things they were pressing for, is make sure if you're going to protest, you are from the university. That's a fair thing to ask from the university.
Right.
Because, if you want to protest and you're not from the, well, go to an off campus and do it.
What the hell is he saying here? I
don't know.
I'm lost here.
I guess he's calling us adults. Not
okay.
adults.
I would agree with that assessment. I have no problem with that.
I don't know.
Anyway, back as I say, someone who's
Gary, he's the question answerer. Okay, so
we have the idea that I think, again, for those of us who were protesting back then, you know, it's one thing to protest and as an 18-year-old, it's another to look at protests when you're 72.
Right.
And I think, you know, my feeling, and nobody should care what my feeling is, but this is this is kind of my worldview. Netanyahu is a war criminal. I have no problem saying that. None. Hamas is a bunch of bad people. I have no problem saying that, with one proviso. And that is, how different are they? And I know what the answer is going to be, but you have to ask, how different are they than the American revolutionaries who didn't like England? I mean, yeah, again.
I think they're a lot different.
In what sense?
Well, first of all, ideologically, these people are willing to do for a religious matter. They believe that their religion is the final religion. The way they treat their people is different than the way that the colonists did in those days. I know there was guerrilla warfare, but burning babies, and I can show you a photograph if you want to see.
Right. I know.
It is absolute slaughter, and it is unacceptable, and it's using people as human shields. Hamas is completely different than.
But that still doesn't bring back 34,000 people, if that's the number.
Well, that's another thing too, because that number is from the Gaza Ministry, which is Gaza, and we don't know. There's never once, not once, have we had any second party to confirm those things. There's no confirmation whatsoever, and I wouldn't believe anything that comes out of the Gaza Ministry. They're liars. They're liars. They're liars.
Would you believe anything that came out of the Israeli ministry?
I
wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't. But I'll tell you what. I have seen videos of a woman who's been dragged along the ground and her cunt is on the ground and people around are applauding that. And if you think that, I'm talking about you, Dave, but I would ask anybody, if your daughter or your granddaughter's cunt was on the ground and people there were applauding the rape and the sodomization of women, cutting their Achilles heels, and then 70% of the population is saying, way to go, then we got a problem.
Well, that's my point.
That's not the American revolutionists. That is barbarism. That's not even an animal. That is monstrous. And there's a big difference. And I'm not going to blame the victim on this. I mean, I don't like Netanyahu. I think he did a horrible job with the West Bank. He's partially responsible for certain things. But for example, the money that was given to Hamas, that was for people, food, medicine, and water, and they used it for tunnels. They used it for tunnels. And we're guilty too. If Netanyahu's guilty, then we're guilty because we should have. And what do? Do you bomb them because they made tunnels instead of using it for the people? No, Hamas is murderous. I'll say it over and over again. And again, I'll ask you, and this thing is on tape for 20 years. If you saw one of your children, your wife, I'm talking in general, your daughter, and their cunt is on the ground.
I'll turn that around. If my son or daughter was killed by an Israeli,
and I'm going to answer that because I knew you were going to ask that. If I knew, there's a difference. If I knew that the government was acting in good faith, trying to defend itself for a real reason, that's okay. That I would understand. Like if I was bombed, I'm saying exactly. If I were a German in World War II, I would understand the United States bombing the countryside and going after every. And
bullshit, Brian.
No bullshit. If it means taking out factories and some innocent people are there, that's what war is. I'm sorry. No. Oh, so are you going to say that we shouldn't have bombed Germany? We shouldn't have bombed Tokyo?
I didn't say that.
Then what are you saying?
I'm saying
what are you saying? Germans
and Japanese would have a different view of that bombing than Americans did.
That doesn't matter. I'm talking about as an American. What would you do? Do you think we should not have bombed the Germans?
It's not a question. We're not talking about Americans.
We're talking about if somebody attacks you, you have the right to go after them. And if they're going to use people as human shields, that's their problem and their guilt. We're not.
I'm going to throw a card that's kind of unfair, but I'm going to throw it. Also, you have a Jewish background, which you can't ignore.
Absolutely, I do. But I'm intelligent enough to know as an atheist that it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have. That's why, for example, if 500,000 Syrians are being murdered in a year, why aren't you and everybody else complaining about that? There's more murder right now. There's more genocide going outside of that area, and nobody says peep about it. And I'll tell you why. Because it has nothing to do with Jews. That's it. That is solely it.
Well, now you lost me.
There are definite genocides outside of Gaza. Okay?
Correct.
And genocide is when you are trying to eliminate an entire people. Israel, if it was a genocide, they would kill everybody in 10 minutes. They could make that place sand in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. They don't do it. Okay? They're killing people usually right around a 1-to-1 ratio. During World War II, the ratio of civilian deaths toward military deaths was 20-to-1. We're hanging out around somewhere between 1 to 2-to-1 in Gaza. So,
so
this is what happens during war.
What would be your solution to the situation in Gaza and Palestine?
I'll tell you what the solution is. I'll tell you exactly what the solution is.
Okay.
Give up the hostages. Lay down your arms. You'll get a state of your own, and that's that.
We get the hostages back. Netanyahu's going to give him that state? I don't think so.
He will, because Netanyahu will make the decision.
Come on, Brian.
He will do it because he won't be in power. The Israelis will take him out. That won't happen in Gaza. The Israelis will take him out. He will be taken out when that war is over, and they've done it before.
Why don't they take him out now?
Because they're at war. There's no way that you'll be destroyed from within. He's not a good ruler. He's a Trump. He's terrible. He's absolutely hideous, and I can agree with that. But he's not purposely killing the entire Palestinian people. To say that that's a genocide, he's trying to protect his own people. However, he's an idiot, and he has done illegal things, and he's got to go. But at the same time, you've got to be able to parse between what Netanyahu has done and what was done to Israel. And you're intelligent. You know the difference.
Well,
it's not funny. They were slaughtered, Dave. 1,200 people were slaughtered simply because they were Jewish.
And how many Palestinians are dead because they weren't Jewish?
The Palestinians are dead because of Hamas's leadership. The Israelis would not have killed them. They didn't go after them. They're trying to go after them.
The Israelis want a Palestine state. They want that.
Yes. They had a chance for it. They had a chance for it, and they declined it. They declined it.
Who declined it?
Yasser Arafat.
And how many years ago was that?
Does it matter?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then if it matters, then why between 1947 and 1948, 1967, Jordan ruled the West Bank and Egypt ruled Gaza? Why aren't you mad at them? They're the ones that held them. Why didn't they give the Palestinians rights? If they were the ones who were in rulers, why didn't they, Dave? And they're Islamic.
Because it's the same thing.
What's the same thing?
It's about power. That's all. It's about power.
Well, then why don't you say something about Egypt and say something about them?
Brian. Why don't I say something about John?
Egypt's got 30-foot walls. They won't let people from Gaza come in.
I'm not, Brian, you're missing the point.
I know the point.
Oh, you know the point.
I do know the point. I do know the point. Jewish life means less than Palestinian lives to most people. And that's it. They don't care about the 13. They don't care about the 1,300 people who died. They don't.
Who doesn't?
Anybody outside of Israel, aside from Jews, don't care about the 1,300 people. I don't see people talking about it. All they talk about is the genocide Joe. They don't talk about the 1,300 people. How many times have we talked about the 1,300 people? How many times have you talked about it?
I'm just finding it interesting that
I'm asking you a question. How come you haven't talked about it? Is it important to you?
Not if you're one of the 1,300. When you go, Brian, You've lost.
Oh, that's not even funny.
You've lost all perspective, Brian.
I have
Stop.
exact perspective. I have a perspective of
Okay.
somebody who's
What
not
I hear
Jewish
you
and somebody who is Jewish.
What I hear you saying and what's coming across clear is the anger. Jews are good, Arabs are bad. That's what you're saying. Is that correct?
No, what I'm saying is butchering and slaughtering people for no reason at all is bad. Protecting somebody, trying to protect your country because you've been attacked is not necessarily bad. It's a difficult decision to make. But when you butcher, when your sole goal is just to eliminate people and to put them in ovens like they did during
Oh my God.
during World War II, well, that's what happened.
I understand that, Brian. And what I wonder about is,
Oh, now here's
How do you
Gary.
get-
Now I'll talk to you, Gary. I'll talk to you. Bullshit, Brian. Thousands of people. Yeah, 30,000 people. We don't know how many are dead, okay? But are you going to believe the Gaza ministry, Gary? Is that what you're going to believe? You'll believe them? And
Okay,
it hasn't been
let's go back.
confirmed by a second source? You're going to believe them. I don't doubt that a lot of innocent people have died. But they weren't murdered simply and slaughtered. They didn't take a chainsaw like they did to Khashoggi to kill them. Jews don't do that. Jews don't do that.
oh, they don't.
No, they
Mossad has
don't.
Never done that.
Who does
Mossad
it?
has never done
Who does it? David Berkowitz?
Has Mossad done it?
Who?
Mossad.
And who did they go after? Did they go after innocent people? Do they go after innocent people? Yes or no?
I don't know.
You don't know. Then why say anything?
Because you are stuck on a point that I don't agree with. That's all. It's very simple.
Okay, well, let's leave it at that.
Why? Let's keep going. We're
There's
not gonna
nothing to
change it.
say. We've said it all.
Well,
You don't
what I'm saying
agree.
is,
I
would
don't
you
agree.
Would you agree that the situation is complex?
Absolutely.
All right.
That I agree on.
Then when you get
Because it's complex
situations-
even within Israel. Okay? It's not
I
a genocide
understand
when
that.
you have people in your own country,
Nobody
Arabs who
used
have
the-
the right to
I never
vote,
used- I
have
never
Arabs
used-
who have a right to be
You're
a
the
judge.
one, Brian.
Can't do that. 13 countries don't allow Jews in their country simply because they do it. Those are Islamic nations. 13. Or 22. I take that back. 22.
And you know this because I'm just wondering your source. That's all.
Because
I'm
it's
not aware.
important. Okay? I'll do that for you.
What's that? Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, so I need to know.
I will gladly do that to you.
And you are sure that your Jewish traditions don't enter into your feelings at all?
I can't say that my personal experiences haven't influenced me.
Well, that's a start. The other thing, Brian, that bothers me a little bit is you keep using the word genocide. I don't think I used that, so I don't know where that came from. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't know where that came
No,
from.
you're talking about war crimes, and that has a smell
That's
of genocide.
different. That's different than genocide. I'm talking about war crimes. That's not genocide.
Okay. First of all, 22 nations,
need
Islamic
to know-
nations,
I wanna
first
know
of all,
I wanna know your
disallow
source.
atheists, number one. Okay?
Say again.
They disallow atheism.
Okay. That's not Judaism.
That's true. That's true. That's true. But Jews have been expelled. Let me just put this down. Okay.
Well, that's different than not being allowed in.
Well, expelled is okay.
No,
You want
Brian,
to
it's a different thing.
Jews expelled.
It's two different things. And the only question I have, Brian, is what I mean. I know. I just want to know the source. I'm not questioning your. it's
All
just-
right. Let me go here.
I know you don't go to Truth Social, so I know that's not the source. But
All right.
we got some problems, Brian. Wikipedia is not an authorized source. I mean, I use it all the
Well,
time.
we can look at the sources in Wikipedia.
But you don't. But they don't necessarily footnote it. In other words, you just don't know. So
Well, I mean, you can either accept it or not. Like, if you don't want to accept it, then there's nothing I can show you that is
Well,
going to.
no, it's just it's a legitimate question.
I mean, does it
If
seem
you could do it to
unreasonable
me,
to say that most Islamic countries, number one, don't like Jews?
there
I mean,
is.
are you going to tell people that if you're a Jew and you go to Saudi Arabia, you go to Iran, and some are Persian, some are Arab, it doesn't matter. You go to those nations that you're going to be treated well.
No,
Do you? And let me ask you this, because you've been asking me questions. I'll ask you some questions.
right, sure.
Do you think as an Arab visiting Israel, you would be treated better or worse there than a Jew going to one of the Islamic neighboring countries that you?
I
if you
would
did the opposite?
assume. I'm assuming, just like in America, it would depend on where you were in Israel.
Well, yeah, but the West Bank to me is in Israel. It's not. I mean, it shouldn't
I'm
be
sorry,
Israel.
I missed.
And that's
I
what
missed. I missed the first part. What'd you say, Brian?
I'm saying. If you're comparing what would happen if one were in the other's land,
Correct.
who would be accepted? Do you
I
see
don't
any
either.
Jews serving, as judges in any Islamic country?
Not to my knowledge.
I've never, but that happens in Israel. And the many Arabs are very happy to live in Israel. The problem, first of all, Gaza is not Israel. Gaza is not Israel. Has a sovereign government run by Hamas. That's not Israel. So
No
who's
kidding.
responsible for the Palestinians in Gaza? Who is responsible for the
Their
Palestinians
leaders.
in Gaza?
The leaders
And are they Jewish?
are America's leaders Lithuanian?
Right. So my point is, are they to blame? Is Israel to blame for the fact that Gaza spends all their money on tunnels instead of food, which was given to them by Netanyahu? The money they used it. Netanyahu made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mess. It's a mess, Dave.
I agree.
And that part of that world
I
is a
agree.
mess. It's because
Now,
we're still
we
they're
just
still in the 7th century. And I'm not backing Israel 100%. Don't get me wrong. Anybody out there understands that. I think the West Bank should go, rightly so, to the Palestinians. I think I have no problem with that. Okay? There should be no settlements there. Okay? But the West Bank was
okay. Let me ask you a question,
controlled.
then, Brian.
The West Bank was controlled by Jordan from 48 to 67. Gaza was
The pro-
controlled by Egypt, and not a
and
word. It was only when Israel did it,
and who set that up? Do you know who set that up?
with the Jewish mandate,
England.
the British mandate,
set
the
that
British
up.
mandate. Sure, right, the British mandate,
And I
and that
think,
happened.
again, that's part of the problem.
But the Palestinians never had a country. There was never a
And
true people. The Palestinians.
Israel was given the country, which they once had.
A
Okay.
long time ago. Okay, we
Well,
can argue they were conquered, they had it, but don't forget
no. But I mean,
the Islam was created in the 7th century. Judaism was on. So if you look at
one
the
of,
archaeological digs, you will see there was no
no.
doubt there were kosher people living there because you wouldn't
Oh,
find
Brian,
certain
there's no
animals
argument.
there.
You've got no argument with that. I think what happened though, especially with the Brits, it could have been anybody, but the Brits had most of the had the largest colonies involved. They didn't really pay attention to the history of the areas. Same thing happened in Pakistan and India, where you drew lines that didn't mean it. It happened in African countries. And so my point is, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's too complex for me to make a decision.
All right. Well,
It really is.
let's just put it this way. Okay, people will argue one way or another
Right.
whether this would have been theirs or this been that. Look, there were Bedouins. There weren't a specific people called the Palestinians. Okay, some say that only 8% of that area was actually what you would call modern day Palestinians. I don't want to go into the percentages. I don't live there. That's just what I have read. But the point is, it was given to them through the British mandate. It was desert. It was the shittiest area you could possibly. And now, the reason why people want it because it looks good now. They have things growing there. There was just nobody gave a shit about it before then. It was just nasty, nasty area, and you had Bedouins. It was nothing. It was nothing. It became
I
something.
have a question for you, Brian, and I'm just wondering. there have been many attacks on Israel. Okay, terrorist attacks. I'm not saying that, but recently, unless I'm missing something outside of I mean, this is not downplaying the fact that hostages were taken, all that kind of thing. I wonder why there isn't more hitting Israel than there is. That's just a question. I
What
mean,
do you
it
mean
would
from
seem
other
to me.
countries?
No, I meant like okay, let's
First of
take the
all, the
Americans.
Saudi Arabians, behind the scene actually support Israel. They
Oh,
don't like the
and
Palestinians.
oh well, and that is also correct.
Okay, Jordan
But
has no love for Palestinians. If there's any true Palestinian country, it's Jordan. 60% of Palestinians live in Jordan.
right, and I
Okay,
understand that.
Jordan
But I'm
controlled the West Bank at one time, but they weren't going to give it to the Palestinians. They
right.
didn't.
Well, that's of course, the problem with the Saudis, or one of the problems is they have an inordinate amount of money to play with, and I think if you
And
study
they
nine
hate
11,
Iran, and
yeah,
it's
well,
to their
yeah,
benefit to
sure.
do
Oh,
it this way.
there's not no. I mean, anybody who thinks there's a unified Arab world is absolutely wrong. The question becomes, of course, is what do you do about the situation? And I don't know. I
Well,
don't know. I don't see.
I've said this. This is the problem with religion. I think it would been, even if Israel, and I would hope that Israel would become an atheist country. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
No,
But you
well,
would hope that everybody would just lose their religion, and then you just create open areas where you forget about
right.
the boundaries. But unfortunately, the religious crap has got to stop, whether it's in Israel or
And
Saudi
but you know what,
Arabia.
Brian, you're absolutely right because that religious crap is bad
It's
all over the world,
nonsense. It's got to go.
all over the
Every
world.
single
But
religion has got to go.
I don't think it will go, Brian. I don't
Oh,
think it
and,
will.
and this is,
Although
yeah, of course.
although I will say that again, I'm always hesitant with polls though are showing that the largest number of young people now are coming up non-affiliated religiously in America. That's what they're claiming.
Right.
So maybe
But that
you
doesn't
know
get us out of the woods, Dave, because
well no I
because
I'm
even
sorry
those atheists who say they're not religiously affiliated, they still have these things of making their own religions. That this spiritual this and spiritual
and
that,
I
and that
guess
runs into that same thinking.
bring it all back to full circle. No matter what happens, I think that Israel Gaza is going to have a tremendous influence on the 2024 election here in
Right.
America.
And by the way, this is another point about Gaza. We're trying to put in what do you call those temporary piers so they can get the food, which the Israelis
Right.
are protecting. But you notice that the American army doesn't want to put boots on the ground. They want the Israelis there.
Well, of course.
And
I
the
mean
British
that's
don't want to put boots on the ground there.
well, no, because
Nobody wants to put boots on the ground in Gaza because not just Jews will be shot. Anybody who's not
no,
from Gaza
I
will
would
be shot.
yeah.
And you're not going to,
And
ideally, you should have the UN there, or even better, is what should happen. You should have Saudi
yeah,
Arabia.
well, I wonder why. I mean, I assume it's got something to do with veto power for some countries or something.
I don't know.
I mean, the UN. It's logical, right? I mean, that's one of the things they should do is when you have a situation such as that,
Well,
is to get
see,
in
because
there.
what happened in northern Israel, in southern Lebanon, when they did have the UN, they were completely ineffective. They were getting shot out and killed, and then they just gave
Right.
up.
Yeah.
This is why Reagan, after 283 people died in 1983,
Right.
he got the hell out because a complete mess there. I don't have to tell you that it's a complete
No,
mess.
no,
And when
no,
you try to say, well, okay, maybe we can do this, we can do this, we can do this,
no.
it
Well,
doesn't make any
that's
sense. And you know what? I go. I'm gonna. This is gonna be completely off the charts, but
no.
it
Go
gives
ahead.
an example of how angry I get at that part of the world. I see these poor people in Gaza trying to flee, and I literally do feel bad for them. Okay, as long as they're not cheering on or somebody getting
Right. I
raped,
got you. I got
I'm
you.
good
Right.
with that. I have no ill will toward anybody, even if they're religious. But I see 20 people in a cart with this little donkey, and they're whipping the shit out of it. You're not going to gain fans in that part of the world. That's the way they treat animals. I have pictures with PETA. They show in the Islamic world what they do to camels when they get angry with camels. They drag them with this kind of
Well,
absurd thinking. I know that people of all faiths can be crazy and cruel, but this is just an especially archaic, barbaric type of thing, and it's got to stop. And somebody's got to put their foot down and say, this behavior cannot continue. You can have your rights, you can have your point of view, but the minute you're going to drag somebody and you're going to rape somebody and break their legs in half or put somebody in an oven, you're not going to get anywhere. Just like the protesters. It's, if you want to protest, fine, but if you're going to take your flag and you're going to jam it in somebody's eye, now you got to, because even somebody like you who protests, you're not for that shit. And I know you, Dave. You're not for that shit.
No, I'm not. What I think, what I'm saying.
And by the way, I have to apologize for getting so upset because I've been through this, Dave. You're my friend, my good friend here. Okay,
will always be that. Never bothers me. What I think it shows tonight. I'm glad it was kind of a deliberate attempt on my part too. The world right now is not a moral place. It's never been a moral place. Okay, it's not. But some of us do have a set of morals, and they come in conflict with what we see in the world, right? And instead of being able to sit down and discuss often, unless we are friends like you and I mean, we can have a discussion, we holler at one another, and it's still not going to evolve into something that's personal. No, it's not. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that.
And we've known each other's views before this.
Oh, no. Like I said, it's what I find interesting since Trump. My views have really been challenged, like free speech. Okay, I'm very staunch about that. But what about when free speech does say from, from the river to the sea?
Or just saying death to America, death to Israel. That to me is not...
Yeah, and again, if you don't know that, people who say, well, that's just a saying.
If you're living here and you're saying death to America, I got a problem.
Well, and
because that borders on being a threat.
And there you are.
You can say, like, I don't like America, but don't say death to America.
And
don't live here.
And that's what happens. So, again, we're not going to solve that problem, but we can both agree that is a problem now for it'll be a problem for the American elections. It will be, because I think that Michigan, for example,
right. It's a problem. See, here's the weird thing, Dave. I know you're talking with Michigan. You could see that there are 100,000 votes either way.
Right.
But if you're talking about the Israeli situation with Gaza, most Republicans, as you would agree, are pro-Israel. We're talking 90%.
I think honestly, most.
So you're talking 65 million people, 65 million voters. Half of the Democratic Party is for Israel, half against, roughly. You might have 55-45 on one side or the other.
Right, somewhere. Yeah.
So when we're talking about the entire voting population, we're talking about 75% are pro-Israel. But in Biden's case, to win Michigan, to win, I would say Michigan would be the number one, because that's where you have most.
That's the largest.
That's what he's worried of losing, because 100,000 votes might mean the difference. I don't think, I would hope that those people who are for, even if they're pro-Hamas, which I don't agree with, because there is a difference being pro-Hamas and being pro-Palestinian, but I would think that in either case, they should know, as you've said quite correctly, if you look at Donald Trump and you look at Joe Biden, understand it. If you vote for Donald Trump, or even third party, you're going to be in a lot worse position if you are pro-Palestinian under Donald Trump.
It's interesting. I would carry that through to somebody who supported Israel, and I would also carry it through to somebody who supported the Palestinian, even if it were Hamas, because Donald Trump is going to do what Donald Trump does. You know what I mean? He has no allegiance. He has no center.
He has no allegiance. And if you are pros and you think that he's simply going to be pro-Israel all the time, I don't agree with that.
And to think, as I said before, but it bears repeating tonight, we're talking about the ultimate horror of war. I really was afraid when Donald Trump first became elected that he would get us involved in a war. His temper would go to such an extreme and whatever. What he did, though, he turned his temper and revenge into America. And instead of, kind of buddied up to Putin. And I think he does respect whatever he thinks respect is. He admires, he wants to emulate Putin's power. And what he forgets is, which you always point out, being a Russian expert, and you are, the fact of the difference in the makeup of the people. Russia doesn't have a established idea of freedom, and America does. Now,
right. Their established idea is freedom from things,
Right.
from violence on the streets. That's different than freedom to speak out. They like freedom
Now,
from
we're
things.
this has been a good discussion. I just want to end with this today, and I saved it for last. Um,
By the way, I didn't
I,
expect to talk about Israel tonight. I swear to God, I
why
didn't.
not? It
Just
is.
didn't. I
Brian,
know it's an
Brian,
issue, but it's to me, it's
Brian,
still not the
it's a
big issue.
huge
The Supreme Court is
Brian.
the big issue. I mean,
No,
I'm glad to talk about it, but the Supreme Court is the big issue.
I disagree with you in that sense. I think they're equally. I think honestly, they equally have an impact on the election, and that's really what we're talking
And
about.
I would say in Michigan, yes.
Well, across, I mean, across all of America. I mean, if, and the other thing is, young people assuming that what is happening on college campuses are some reflection. They're not all Arab students out there. There are a lot of non-Arab
There's some
students.
Jews that
Yeah,
are
well,
pro,
what I'm saying is,
pro-Palestinian.
if they all sit it out. I mean, so I think it's very important with the discussion tonight. But what I was going to say is, I was talking to someone today who actually works at the White House, and this person expressed grave concern about President Biden's health, and actually went so far as to say, this person said, they, and I'll use they to disguise the sex of the person, kind of convinced that Biden can't serve the 4 years. Now, that's not a
Does
reason.
it really matter? Honestly, Dave, I mean, nobody wants to see
No,
the
it does.
president.
No,
Does it
no,
matter
no,
if the
no.
president dies?
No, it doesn't, Brian. Not to me and not to you, because we're convinced that
Anybody
Trump
can die.
is the bad. But a lot of people are holding on to that. And you know what the other fear is, and it's unfounded and founded at the same time, is with the current vice president. Do you realize that her numbers are lower than the president's? Her
I would
popularity numbers.
assume, yeah, sure.
And of course, she's a woman, and she's an African
But again,
American.
where do we go as Democrats? We'd have to vote. Now, I don't know how that plays out with the average voter.
I don't disagree, Brian, but that's what I'm saying. That's kind of what we have to do somehow, is to convince people that it does just what you said, that it doesn't really. I mean, the issue at hand is stopping Donald Trump from becoming president. And maybe, and we were hoping, or I shouldn't say we, I was hoping that there'd be enough legal action. And today, another person took what you said. You jumped on it even before I did. The fact that Merrick Garland, being so cautious of not appearing to be political,
He blew it.
Really?
He's like Judge Ito. Ever since Judge Ito was involved in the OJ case, it just is so worried about don't offend this side, don't offend that side, and Merrick Garland has been a waste. Complete waste.
And so now now we're kind of stuck. Now, I didn't read tonight. I didn't know. You get a chance to look. There should have been a protest tonight. There was a planned protest in D.C. The annual, they call it the nerd, what do they call it, the nerd prom or whatever. The press correspondent big dinner is tonight, and they bring in Hollywood people. Biden was supposed to attend, and it was in Kalorama, which is a section, a very wealthy section of D.C. But there was supposed to be a big protest there. We'll see. And I think now I also saw we're coming up in June. There's going to be a nationwide, protest, and maybe then we'll get a handle on how many people are actually out there. Is it just college students? And it seems to be at this point they certainly are taking the lead, just like we did when I was there in terms of Vietnam. I'm not equating the two. I'm just saying young people are in the lead, and although I would say. And it was equal. There were a lot of people just fed up with the system. Young people said, we're not going to vote. And of course, what I now know at 72 is you have to vote. You have to vote.
Absolutely, you have to vote.
A no vote is a vote. I mean, no matter what, you can't say it doesn't matter, because it does. You can't say that, my candidate is.
Well,
Jill
then
Stein.
you know what? Then they'll find out when the shit hits the fan.
But
they'll
it's the
find
same-
out.
It's the same, although not quite as deadly. It's the same as a little baby killed by bombs or whatever, right? The idea of it is for those who aren't involved or had some other feeling, and I don't know, maybe we have some pretty intelligent listeners / viewers. Maybe they can come up with an idea of how we reach these people, these people who, are saying it doesn't matter if I vote. Well, you could make that statement maybe if you live in Alabama, maybe.
There was
But if
something I think was somebody said about Canada, which I was kind of surprised.
where I didn't, yeah, we haven't seen any comments for a
Um,
while. I think, the fact that, you were wrong and I was right, I think
well, I
it's
mean, I'm just saying that
no.
I've been hearing this thing about the conservatives, the right wing in Canada. Now, that's something I still have not, I have no grasp of because I only follow the hockey in Canada. But it seems
Yeah,
kind of strange that there would be a right wing growing in Canada. I mean, that I still don't get.
well, you know what? I assume, and again, I'm speaking somewhat in ignorance of, or not somewhat, in ignorance of Canada politics. Uh, I think, the last couple of prime ministers have been pretty liberal. So usually there's a backlash on the other side. It's just like a power vacuum. You know what I mean? And so maybe maybe it's a reaction to that. Who knows? And we will see next week. I guess we'll come back because I don't think. Yeah, of course, Trucker John. I mean, that's that. I mean, it sounds, and Ichabod comes up. I mean, and that's good. Uh, the idea is, though, and I don't have an answer for this. I mean, how do you convince someone when tempers get so heated about you have to vote? I mean, you can't order someone to vote, so you have to come up with some logical reason for them to vote. And pretty much, if they've decided they're not going to, they're not going to. You know what I mean? I don't know that.
Well, then Dave, this
Uh,
is what we have, and
yeah.
I
Well,
I don't know what to say. It's
no, you don't. I mean, that's. I don't think. And again, it's sort of like the Chicken Little and the Sky is Falling or the Boy Who Cried Wolf. We've said, not you and I, but people have said this is the most important election of your lifetime. No, it's not. This is. I mean,
right.
this is the one. Unless I'm completely mistaken, this is the one where we're either going to continue our democracy or we're not. And I think it just comes down to that. And there's all the signs are there, Mr. McConnell and Mr. Barr, and
Oh, there we go. He just got cut off again. He should be back. There we go.
really.
You got cut off for about 3 seconds.
Oh yeah, I see that.
You said McConnell, and then it just blocked off. It's not me either. It's just weird. He'll come back. Dave. Hopefully
I'm
you'll be able to
telling
stay
you,
on
I'm
there.
I'm telling you, it's censorship.
Right, okay.
I'm telling you that the Trump gods are watching us, and they're saying that. Yeah. So next week, what'll be interesting is there'll be another issues. There'll be the continuing ones that weren't resolved, and
By the
then
way,
we'll
Dave,
have more.
next week we'll have to do a Sunday because I'll be away on the 4th.
I'll
The
do
11th I
Sunday is
can
fine.
make because I have a
No,
tracking
Sunday's actually better for me.
tomorrow. Okay,
So
so
Sunday,
next week, folks, will be on the Sunday.
yeah, and we'll put it out a couple of times. So anyway, um, again, as we always do, thank anybody who was watching or listening. Um, good comments tonight.
Sorry, I got a little intense, Dave. I'm going to
Brian, will you
apologize.
stop that?
Okay.
I can goad you into doing that every show if you want me to.
Well, I know. Well, don't do too much because
Well, I
nobody
did it
likes me
tonight.
if I'm angry.
No, I did it tonight to show how. What am I trying to say? To show. I mean, it wasn't like some.
And you've done that before too. I don't
know,
really know
I
when
know.
it's happening, but
I know I can, and it's not you. It's because you feel passionately about what you
Right.
feel about, Brian,
right.
and that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I think one of the things that bothers me is that a lot of people don't have that passion, and that's what we're trying to say. And also, I think sometimes it is an object lesson. We're both teachers, and sometimes to say that two friends. And sometimes I really feel what I'm saying. Sometimes I don't, and I'm never going to tell you which one is which, because it's an exercise in showing how two people can disagree
Right.
at a volume that's up here, but yet realize when it's said and done that
And we don't have the kind of show where we do that all the
no,
time, and
well,
that's
no, just
not what we want.
But because actually, probably
The good thing is we're not
Nine.
Republican Democrat. That's the good thing.
no. Well, no, 9 times out of 10 we probably agree,
Right.
on things. So it's kind of hard to
Which
do
is
that.
funny,
But-
Dave, because it reminds me of my father and I. We were both liberal, but we would have such arguments that I couldn't
Oh,
talk to him because we're, fighting over splitting hairs. It was
Well,
just
yeah,
like,
I mean, but again, I think that the big thing is
And
Ukraine
that's
on
an
the
issue
brink.
that really bugs me too, is Ukraine.
Well, see
That thing,
now, see to
I'm
me,
very
to
pro
me,
Ukraine.
that's a little bit easier to resolve. I think there Putin's bad. You raised an interesting point. I think it was just you and I talking when you talked about some. There's a section of the Ukraine that is probably more Russian than. Um, yeah, and I agree with John.
Thank you, John.
Although it is very foolish. If I really did,
Yeah, I'm not an
you know,
expert on the Gaza situation. I just, I'm putting it from my perspective, the facts that I know, and some, as Dave would say, some personal experiences and
yeah, and
my
I think
emotion.
that's another thing that that informs us. I mean, all right, Mr. Bryan. So we're gonna go with
All right.
Sunday. What time? You want to do it at 8? I'll do it
Yeah,
early.
I'd like to do it a little early. I don't want to do a 9 o'clock on a Sunday because I have to get up
No,
the next
and
morning.
I was talking to Mr. Joe and Joey Fulcher, and Joe and I were talking about things, and he said just remember we have to get up and go to work Monday, and you do too. So I think 8 o'clock is 8 to 9.
Is Joey
And
with us right now? I haven't heard from Joey at all.
he probably dropped out because he was worried. Because you disagreed with me, he was worried about you losing your goddamn mind. That's probably the way I look at it.
Joey's usually right from the beginning to the end. Now, Joey can be a troublemaker. Now, you guys don't know him
No,
out
he
there,
can't. Joey's a
but
good
he's
guy.
a good
All right,
friend.
Brian. Good week.
All right,
We'll talk.
see you, everybody. And Dave, I'll talk to you. Oh, he's still there. The troublemaker's
All right.
still there.
Hey, Joe.
Okay, Joey.
Take care, guys.
All right. I got to click finish here.
Yes,
You
you
guys
do.
should have a Trumper as a guest. Yeah, well, um, if that Trumper could be sane, I suppose, but I don't think either one of us, meaning Dave nor I, could be. I'm not good with that because if I was emotional today with a Trumper, because again, that's to me the most serious situation. I know, obviously Dave wrote the Gaza thing, but that's not number one with me. I live here. My most important situation is what's happening here right now, and that's Trump. So I try to eliminate all the other important issues. Everybody knows I care about climate change, but that's right now it's at a political level that must be solved before you get to it, because that's how it's going to be solved. And I have to, run triage on this kind of shit. So, and thank you to everybody. Thank everybody. I mean, everybody. I can't name all. It sounds like the Oscars, but I do want to say thanks again to Veg because that was very, very kind of you, and you've done this before. To give a shout out to the channel, and your channel is getting better and better. And I love the camera and everything, and the creativity. I did not see your video today. I know you came out with one. I'm going to check it out. So thank you. See you, everybody. Have a great night. And I think I need an aspirin.